Hi, happy Thursday afternoon. Today I will be reading chapters 3 and 4 of Night Books. Last time we left Alex, somebody had just given him a hint that the witch liked stories, and I was pronouncing the witch's name wrong. I was calling her Natcha, but it's really Natasha, spelled with the CH, so it threw me off. So I've made that correction. See, we all make mistakes. Chapter 3 is called The Thing Inside the Backpack. Okay. Alex knew he wasn't brave. He was terrified of roller coasters and pretty girls and losing his parents in a crowd. When older kids bumped into him in the hallway, intentionally or not, he always mumbled, "My bad," and kept walking. Even math tests made him sweat. Unfortunately, this was the type of situation where an unusual amount of bravery was required. Since Alex, by his own estimation, wasn't up to snuff, he tried to imagine what his big brother would do. It wasn't hard. John reacted to any sort of adversity with violence. They had a box full of video game controllers to prove it. He would have just knocked her out the first chance he got, Alex thought. For the most part, Alex considered his older brother a walking meathead, just a few IQ points north of a zombie. But a John-style approach seemed to be his best bet. The moment that Natasha returned, he would shove her to the ground, grab her keys, and dash out of the room and lock the door behind him. I'll have to surprise her before she gets a chance to cast any spells, Alex thought. That's the only way this'll work. He pressed his foot against the leg of the bed in a sprinter's pose, his entire body angled towards the door. Every so often, Alex stretched his muscles or cracked his neck, but other than that, he remained still, imagining that he was a soldier on sentry duty. Finally, the doorknob turned. Alex charged. Natasha entered the room, raising her eyebrows at the sight of his lumbering body, and waved her hand dismissively. Alex felt something clutch his ankles with an iron grip, and his left foot left the floor as he was yanked backwards. After a painful landing, Alex looked behind him and saw the legs of the bed wrapped around his ankles like vines. As he watched, they withdrew and solidified into their previous shape. Natasha stared down at Alex with a look of registration, like he had been an errand she could no longer put off. A dirty floor, an empty refrigerator. "My meeting went great," she exclaimed, as though Alex had asked. "New customer placed a huge order. Willing to pay double for it. Isn't that spectacular?" Despite his predicament, Alex was curious. Story witches curse newborns and speckled houses with sugary treats. They didn't run businesses. An order for what?" he asked. "What do you think? Magic-infused oils, of course. Huge market for it. A hex for that annoying neighbor. Extra luck for a weekend getaway to Atlantic City. And love oils." She rolled her eyes in disgust. "I'm so sick of love oils. Then again, business is business." Alex forced a smile. If he couldn't escape, he figured that he could at least stay on her good side. "Congratulations," he said. "That's really great." "So sweet," she said, patting him on the head. "Unfortunately, since everything here is running so well, I don't want to throw any new cogs into the machine. If it ain't broke, don't fix it." She raised her hands into the air, and they began to glow with blue light. "Just be a doll and stand still, and whatever you do, don't close your eyes, like a photograph." Natasha lowered her hands towards Alex's shoulder. He trembled with fear, knowing that there was nowhere to run, nothing he could do to stop her. "I just want to go home," Alex thought. "I just want to see my family again." Suddenly, he remembered what the girl had said. It was a long shot, but he had no other ideas. "Do you want to hear a story?" he asked. Natasha paused, cocked her head to one side. "What kind of story?" "Scary?" Regarding Alex with skepticism, she flicked the blue light from her hands. Interesting, she said. I wonder. She shook her head. Nah, you're just a boy. What kind of scary story can you know? Something you read in a library book? Heard around a campfire? I have no use for the same old tales. You couldn't have heard these, Alex said. I made them up. That's even worse, Natasha snapped. I need real scary stories, not lame kitty tales. Alex flushed with anger. My stories are scary, he exclaimed. Too scary. That's why I was going to burn them all up last night. That doesn't make any sense, she said. If your stories are as good as you claim, why would you destroy them? Alex remained silent. His storytelling instincts told him that he could hold back on the details for now. Once Natasha knew everything, she wouldn't be interested anymore, and if he wanted to survive, he needed to keep her interested. Fine, she said. Natasha clapped her hands together, and a shadowy chair rose from the floor. She eased into it and stared at him expectantly. Tell us a story. Let's see what you've got. Alex picked up his backpack with sweaty palms. What are you doing? Natasha asked. My night books are inside, he said. Night books? The journals I write my stories in. I have trouble sleeping, bad dreams. The only way to get rid of them is to write them down. Night books, Natasha said. She smacked her lips together as though tasting the word. I like that. Bending down on one knee, Alex unzipped the front of the backpack and withdrew a marbled composition book with his name printed neatly on the front. Which story should I read? He thought. There were dozens of possibilities in his nightbook alone. Alex knew that if he picked a bad one, he wouldn't get a second chance. Something short, Natasha said, growing impatient. An appetizer to see if I want to stay for the entire meal. Alex spread the nightbook open, flipping through the pages with shaking hands. Finally, he settled on something that he thought just might work. If she doesn't like this, I'm a goner, he thought. He started to read. So this is a story within a story. It's called Lost Dog. The first time that Greg saw the dog at his friend Eric's house, the two boys had been hanging out all day, and after finally getting bored of video games, they went outside to throw a frisbee around. The dog was sitting on the front porch. It was a medium-sized animal with mangy white fur, like an old undershirt that had been worn one too many times. Neither boy had recognized the breed. Hey there, said Eric, bending down to scratch the dog's neck. The dog did not wag its tail. It stared up at Eric with sad eyes. Must be lost, Greg said, keeping his distance. His mother, who had been bitten when she was a girl, had always warned him to stay away from strange animals. Check the tag. Maybe he belongs to one of your neighbors. Eric inspected the tag on the chain collar. It was a shiny black triangle without a name or an address. Weird, Eric said, pinching the strange tag between his fingers. Feel this. It's as cold as ice. I'm good, Greg said, backing away. The dog was looking at him with those sad eyes. Greg couldn't say why, but he suddenly wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. I'm heading home. The next morning, his parents sat him down at the dining room table and gave him the tragic news. There had been an electrical fire while Eric and his family were sleeping. None of them had survived. A year had passed. Greg was still sad when he thought about Eric, but not as sad as he used to be. One day he was walking home from school when he passed the Wilsons' house. The lawn hadn't been mowed in a while and the mail was overflowing from the mailbox. No one held these things against them. Their daughter, Rihanna, was sick. Not stay home from school sick, but the kind of sick that required overnight stays in the hospital. A white dog stared out at him from the Wilsons' front window. Until that point, Greg had forgotten all about the lost dog he had seen at Eric's house the day of the fire. Now the memory came rushing back. Can't be the same dog, he thought. Can it? He crossed the lawn to get a closer look. The dog sat as still as a statue and stared back at him with sad eyes. A black triangle dangled from its collar. Greg ran home. The next morning, his mom got a call that made her break down into tears. Renee Wilson had died in her sleep. After that, Greg started looking for the white dog everywhere he went. He never saw it again. Eventually, he became convinced that the dog had just been a figment of his imagination. One beautiful summer day, Greg went to an amusement park. They had just built a brand new roller coaster. It was one of the tallest in the world, and Greg had been waiting all year to ride it. At first, his mom said no. There had been stories online about some safety concerns, but Greg finally talked her into it. He waited for hours to get to the front seat, and he pulled the shoulder harness down over his chest. He knew that it had been worth it. The car climbed the hill ever so slowly, higher and higher and higher. Greg looked down and gasped at how small the people had gotten below him, and he grinned. This is going to be great, he thought. There were tiny steps along the side of the track, just in case a worker needed to get up there and fix something. The very top of the hill was a small platform, just big enough for somebody to stand on. The white dog was there, watching the coaster ascend. Its eyes looked sadder than ever. Sunlight glinted off of the triangle collar. Greg knew that the dog's presence could only mean one thing. "Stop the ride!" he shouted, struggling against his shoulder harness. It was too late. The roller coaster had already began plunging down the first drop. All around Greg, people started to scream. Alex closed the night book. Natasha stared at him for a long time. Eyes narrowed. She hated it, he thought. I'd blown my only chance. "You wrote that?" she finally asked. Alex nodded. "You sure?" Natasha asked again. "Maybe you read a story that you liked in a book and you copied it down, told everybody that you were the real writer." "I would never do that," Alex insisted, his anger for now overriding his fear. "It's my story. I can even tell you where I got the idea. My friend found this dog one day and I got to wondering, what if the Grim Reaper had a pet?" Natasha raised her eyebrows in amusement. "Most kids would have just thrown the dog a ball and called it a day," she said. "That's other kids," Alex said, twisting his notebook in his hands. "They play with dogs. I play with what ifs. I wish I could be more like them, but it's not something I can control." "No," Natasha said with a knowing smile. "I imagine not." She continued to stare at him, absent-mindedly twisting a strand of shadow from the armchair of the magic chair and spooling it around her index finger. Did you like it?" Alex finally asked, hating the uncertainty in his voice. He needed to know. He rarely shared his writing, but when he did, his hunger for immediate feedback bordered on desperate. "Wrong question," Natasha said. She rose from the shadow chair, which dissipated into the air, and pressed her ear against the nearest wall like a safecracker. What are you doing?" Alex asked. "Shh." Natasha listened closely. Finally, she nodded with satisfaction. "Good," she said. "Yes, that will do." "Oh, what will do?" Alex asked. What are you talking about?" The witch ignored him and opened the door leading out of the room. Alex caught a glimpse of an ordinary-looking hallway. "Sleep well, storyteller," Natasha said just before leaving the apartment. "Tomorrow, your real work begins." She locked the door behind her. Chapter 4, A Room of Dark Wonders. Alex was awoken by the sound of his mom and dad in the kitchen as they made a big breakfast together, just like they did every Saturday. Voices, laughter, the clatter of pots and pans. The moment he opened his eyes, however, the noises vanished. It had only been a cruel bridge between dreaming and waking. I'm not home, Alex remembered, orientating himself. I was kidnapped by a witch. He closed his eyes, not ready to abandon the relative safety of his bed, and thought about his family. Who discovered I was missing? Not his brother John. He had to catch the early bus on Friday. Not his dad either. He was never the first to rise, clinging to those final moments of sleep like a life raft. It must have been Mom. Alex pictured her walking into his room and seeing his empty bed. She wouldn't panic, not at first. She would just assume that he was already up, probably eating breakfast or using the bathroom. Soon, however, she would notice that Alex's bag was gone, at which point she would call the school to see if he had taken the early bus for some reason. When they tell her I'm not there, Alex thought, that's when it'll hit her. That's when she'll wake up Dad. Alex wondered if they had called the police yet. He imagined his parents holding hands on their couch, talking to a man in a blue uniform, dutifully taking notes on a small pad, and felt such pure love for them that he had to fight back tears. It's all my fault, he thought. If I hadn't snuck out in the middle of the night to get rid of my night books, none of this would have happened. Then again, if I wasn't such a stupid freak and wrote those freaky stories in the first place. Alex opened his eyes. Thinking about the past wasn't going to help. Right now, the most important thing was to remain calm and figure out a way to escape. The greatest apology he could give his parents was to return home safe and sound. Thus, resolved, Alex sat up and promptly banged his head. Bunk bed, he thought, clasping his hand to his forehead. I forgot. The mattress above him squeaked as something shifted its weight. Hello? Alex asked, frozen. Is someone there? No answer. Heart hammering his chest, Alex backed across the floor until he reached a vantage point that allowed him to see the upper bunk. There was a massive orange lump lying on the mattress. Green eyes watched his every move. What is it? Alex wondered. Some kind of monster? He grabbed a lamp and raised it over his head just in case the creature decided to slither down the ladder and attack. While he waited, Alex took a closer look. He burst into laughter. You're just a cat, he exclaimed. It was, in fact, the fattest cat he had ever seen. Its fur was pumpkin orange with just the slightest hint of dark stripes. Black fur encircled and accentuated its piercing green eyes. The cat's most unusual feature, however, was its long tail that arched straight into the air before spiraling into a neat question mark. You look like a cat that ate a raccoon, Alex said, or a monkey, or both. The cat, who hadn't moved from its spot on the top bunk, seemed unamused by this assessment. It gazed down at Alex like a queen on her throne. I didn't realize Natasha had a pet, Alex said, putting the lamp back and climbing halfway up the ladder. He reached up and stroked the cat beneath its chin. It did not purr or show any signs of pleasure whatsoever, but rather bore his touch like some kind of foul-tasting medicine, best swallowed as quickly as possible. You're not the friendliest thing, are you? Alex asked. That's okay. Glad to have company at all. He scanned the room, curious how the cat had managed to slip inside, and received his second surprise of the morning. The door, with the 2 keyholes, was wide open. Instead of providing passage to an identical room as before, the doorway now opened into a long hallway. This is crazy, Alex said, repositioning his glasses on his nose as though that might change what he was seeing. What happened to the other room? He directed this question towards the cat. It wasn't that he expected an answer. It was just comforting to talk to another living thing. The cat, however, did not seem eager for companionship. It looked back at him with a condescending expression. Stop talking to me. I'm a cat. Okay, Alex said, feeling a giddy rumbling in his stomach that was equal parts nervousness excitement, and good old-fashioned hunger. Time to explore. He walked down a dimly lit hallway, passing a single door to either side of him. They each had 2 keyholes, regular and crescent shape. They're probably bedrooms, Alex thought, thinking about the layout of his own apartment. Maybe one of them belongs to the girl whose voice I heard. He considered knocking, but didn't want to risk waking Natasha. Instead, he stood perfectly still, listening carefully, hearing nothing. After a brief moment of hesitation, he tried turning the knobs. Locked. At the end of the hallway was a small bathroom. There was no crescent keyhole on this door, and Alex was relieved to find it unlocked. He entered the living room. The furniture was expensive, old. The red wallpaper patterned with black flowers. If Alex had not already met the apartment's owner, he would have assumed that she was far older than Natasha, for this was a grandmotherly type of room. Not the nice sort of grandmother who pinches your cheeks and bakes you chocolate chip cookies, but the creepy kind who rock back and forth while knitting sweaters for dead children. Fancy display cases lined the walls, their shelves filled with mysterious objects that looked like they were on loan from some sort of museum of dark magic. Alex saw wands resting upon silver pedestals, black bars with intriguing labels such as last breaths and vampiric ashes, horrific masks that seemed to watch him as he passed, tomes whose spines had been embossed with unrecognizable symbols, and an entire display case packed with crystal balls. Cool, Alex said. Most children would have been frightened by such witchery paraphernalia, but Alex, who constructed his own Halloween advent calendar every October 1st, was fascinated. What do these things do, he wondered, bending down to look closer at a mummified hand. He supposed that he should have been more frightened than ever, since Natasha's impressive collection suggested that she was a powerful witch indeed, and yet Alex couldn't keep a grin off of his face. Creepy things were awesome. On a nearby shelf, he saw a fancy black chest about the size of a shoebox. Until this point, he had resisted the urge to touch anything. Just because he thought the objects were wonderful did not mean he was ignorant of their potential dangers. At the very least, they looked valuable. Natasha would probably turn him into a frog or something if she caught him touching one. Still, his curiosity gnawed at him. What's in the chest? Maybe something amazing, the most amazing thing of all. Hello? Alex called out, testing the silence. Natasha? Anybody home? No one answered. Even the cat was nowhere to be seen. Okay, he said, stretching his hand towards the chest. I'll just take a quick peek. Something hissed behind him. Alex froze in place and then slowly looked over his shoulder. The orange cat was glaring up at him. It had appeared seemingly out of nowhere. Where did you go? Alex started, and then swallowed the rest of his sentence as he took in the cat's menacing pose. It had looked harmless enough just a few minutes ago, but not anymore. Its back was arched, its fangs bared, a return to predatory roots. Alex, uncertain what had caused this change in the cat's attitude, was afraid to move, afraid to even breathe. Then he noticed that the cat's eyes were not on him at all. They were on the black chest. Of course, his fingers just inches away from it. He slowly withdrew his hand. The cat relaxed, its face returning to its default expression of bored superiority. Is it because I was going to touch the chest? Alex asked. Is it off limits? He found it hard to believe that the cat could be that intelligent. Of course, up until very recently, he believed that magic and witches could only be found in stories. There was clearly a lot he didn't know. No big deal, he thought, leaving the chest alone for now and reaching instead for a straw doll a few shelves away. There's plenty of other interesting stuff in here. The cat hissed even louder than before. Alex snapped his hand back. The cat instantly relaxed. "You're like my own personal guard," Alex said, putting it together. "That's your job, isn't it? To make sure I don't touch anything I'm not supposed to touch?" The cat puffed out its chest, acknowledging Alex's theory. "Got it," he said, raising his hands into the air. "Look, no touching." In a way, he was grateful for the cat's intervention. The magical objects had been a distraction. He needed to look for a way out of the apartment. Alex decided to start with the most logical point, the front door. Or at least the place where a front door should have been. Right now, it was just a wall. Maybe a spell, he thought. Natasha can come and go through the front door whenever she wants, but no one else can leave the apartment. Wondering if he would be able to hear any residents out in the hallway, Alex pressed his ear against the wall. There were no voices, but beneath the wall's paper skin, he heard a rustling sound punctured by rhythmic grinding. It was muffled and faint. Maybe it's the sound of the elevator gears grinding together, Alex thought. He remembered how Natasha had listened to the bedroom wall after he read the story last night. Was that the sound that she heard? He wondered. If so, why did she seem so pleased? He had no idea. In any case, the front door was a dead end for now, so Alex decided to check the nearest window. He expected to see downtown Flushing, signs in Korean and Chinese, parked cars squeezed tightly together, piles of black garbage bags awaiting pickup. Instead, he saw a mirror image of the room he was standing in. "It's the same magic as the bedroom," Alex said. "If I climb through the window, I'll just end up back where I started from. How can I escape from a place that has no exits?" Feeling somewhat dispirited, he explored the rest of the apartment. The cat was his second shadow. The floor plan was identical to his own home, so he knew exactly what to expect. A dining area barely big enough to fit a table and chairs, a washer and dryer unit tucked into an alcove, and 3 additional closets, pantry, linens, and coats. In the small kitchen, 2 peanut butter sandwiches and a glass of milk waited on the counter. Alex had no idea if they were meant for him or not. He hadn't eaten for nearly 2 days and gobbled them down. Compared to the living room, the rest of the apartment was surprisingly ordinary. 2 of the closets had crescent-shaped keyholes, in addition to the ordinary ones. But other than that, Alex didn't come across anything else with a magical vibe. There was one thing that gave him the creeps, however. In the dining room, an antique china cabinet displayed a collection of brightly painted figurines. They were all children, arranged in some manner of play, a girl skipping rope, a boy catching a butterfly with a net. A dozen more, tossing a ball, splashing in a pond, reading on a park bench. Alex was staring at the painfully wide smile of a little girl riding a sled when he heard a scratching noise to his left. He spun around and looked through the archway that separated the dining and living rooms. Someone was unlocking the coat closet from the inside. Impossible, Alex thought. I just checked that closet 5 minutes ago. There was no one there. It wasn't even locked. The key scratched again. It wasn't a metallic sound like a normal key would make, more like a chalk clicking against a blackboard. It seemed to be coming from the crescent-shaped keyhole. It's Natasha, Alex thought, preparing himself. Does she know I've been snooping around her apartment? Is she going to punish me? The door swung open. That's the end of chapter 4. So chapter 5 is The Other Prisoner, and I will read it and upload it tomorrow on Saturday. Oh my gosh, I started this video and said Thursday. Wow, the days are running together. I hope everybody has a good night and that you are joining the read aloud now. If you have any questions, go ahead and feel free to call me, text me, message me, Facebook, however you want to get a hold of me is great. I love and miss you guys. Bye.